I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. I tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up. Please, Lord, forgive them. They try to hold back and chillin' like they ain't know it was written. Break every chain. Wanna free my people from mental prisons. The eyes on the sparrow, I know we'll narrow divisions. Hope is the boat to keep us afloat just as you envision. Faith to erase the pain from all of our people slain. Destined for change, actions to back up your spoken name. When they throw dirt on us, we use it to play the game. When it rains, we go greater together, no matter the weather. Trust these dark days, gonna get better. Know that love will be the light to guide all our endeavors. And even if the tide should rise, we'll ride it forever. Why? We are mighty, we'll fight for our lives, cause we're dying to live. Future is ours, the timing is now. Black and we proud, we're saying it loud. We gave it a roar, there's so much more to give. We breaking down all the wall. And this times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise. I tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up. Never backing down for the cause. Try to put our life on pause, cause we move in the image of God. No matter the hate, the smoking, our spirits remain unbroken. The divine man says you can't count us out. We are the answer. From the youth to the elders, ain't what you can tell us. Style and brilliance of mind, heart as bright as sunshine. Warrior spirits alive, so no, we won't be denied. So vibration is high, and the frequency so angelic, like people, come on. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up. I know these times won't last, even though they've been tough. Just let them know my people been had enough. Tell them we gon' rise up. Tell them we gon' rise up. We gon' rise up.
Yeah.
Peace, family.
What's going on, family? How everybody doing? Soundbytes International Radio. Black Conscious the claim.
One world is the aim.
Conversations pertinent to our diasporic landscape to ensure healing and empowerment to our people the world over across the diaspora. So I'm Asir Khan Nefarah, and this is
Nefarah to my Tira.
Yep. So we are live across Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter via Periscope. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you tell your friend, tell your family to tune in to the conversations. Conversations are always strong when we have them together. So join the chat, listen into the conversation, join us, and let's chat it out. Remember to also follow us on the various platforms. Remember, if you're on Facebook at this time, that you should be following us already. But if not, please make sure that you like and hit follow on Facebook at Soundbytes INTL Radio. For sure. Also, remember, you can follow us on Instagram at Soundbytes International Radio. You can follow us on Instagram right there. So let's tune in that form. Also, again, we're live on Periscope via Twitter via Periscope.
Hit us on the gram.
Right. Soundbytes INTL. So make sure you hit that like, follow button on the Twitters. And also subscribe on our YouTube at Soundbytes International Radio. Please subscribe on YouTube and tell your friends to subscribe on YouTube. Pass the information along so we can get the subscribers up so we can reach more people. That's how that works. Also, remember that you can visit our website at thisissoundbytes.com, where you can Follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Soundbytes International Radio. You can click the buttons, and it'll link you right to it. You can also, purchase some Soundbytes merch, get some Soundbytes wear, some hoodies and such for the, for the season. As the season gets a little cooler, so make sure you get outfitted with that gear from Soundbytes. And also, if you'd like to make a contribution, there is a contribution button available there where you can contribute any side of gift that supports the growth and sustainability of our independent radio as a Black-owned independent organization or operation. Excuse me. You can also hit our Cash App at Soundbytes Radio. Yeah.
Yes.
$sign Soundbytes Radio. But you can do that.
Want to be careful with that.
Absolutely. So it's Monday, of course. It's after 9:30, so it's time for the show. And this week, we wanted to kind of branch out from a particular topic we recently saw on Netflix. Suggested. Yes. I forget about who. I don't know if it was our brother.
I believe it was Arik who
made a suggestion about the trial of the Chicago 7. So that's available now. If you haven't watched it yet already, it's on Netflix for those Netflix users. The trial of the Chicago 7, and this is basically in regards to a trial that took place late 1960s at the height of protests and the civil rights movement and Woodstock and like all those different things in between, and like on the cusp of of Nixon becoming president and Johnson leaving the space. Hoover and all these people, the Black Panther movement was still fresh in its space. Unfortunately, around the time we lost brother Fred Hampton in the struggle through the police raid. So all those things were happening in the space and time of this particular trial, which followed seven young men who in Chicago were set up these protests of the Vietnam War and the upcoming elections and things like that. Democratic convention. They posted up in front of the Democratic convention to protest, and there was unfortunately bloodshed that took place. So the trial was based around the violence that did take place as a result of those protests, and the ins and outs of why, who was involved, the cops, the protesters, who did what first, and all that crap that we usually see, which actually is happening now. We've seen it happen, this year, 2020, right? You've been talking about this, 1968, 69. It was gays peacefully protesting for the sake of justice and rights, and then leaving in bloodshed or being tear gassed or all the things in between, arrested, what have you, for protesting what's right. So that whole trial is taking place around about 6 long months of the trial. And what was interesting about the trial, and again, watch it, but what's interesting about the trial from what it stands at the story, we didn't know about the story. I didn't know about the particular story of the Chicago 7, but it's very interesting. And if you're in tune with these conversations and you don't mind getting a little upset about these topics, then you'll definitely want it. It is a must watch. But basically, it's around these seven young men, 7 young mixtures of white men, Jewish, whatever you want to call, that somehow got intermixed also with Bobby Seale within the case. Not that they got intermixed with it, but that their case was intermixed with his, which was by virtue of this obtuse judge decided it'd be great to mix their trials together. And kind of make Bobby Seale's trial had him as a boogeyman on their case. That it's just a bunch of white kids. Let's add this big scary black man from the Black Panther Party, the big scary Black Panthers, to provide some form of justification for any form of punishment that they were supposed to ensue. So it's definitely a great.
Well, he ended up there by virtue of circumstance.
Circumstance, right? For a separate case.
Because he came there to do a speech. He came there to deliver a speech.
He actually came
to
Chicago.
Because he was associated with the Black Panthers, they decided to arrest him too. Because he was like, I have no reason to be here. I had nothing to do with this riot. I was
two separate
to get
things.
A lecture, and I have no idea what I'm doing here. But because of he was the leadership of the Black Panther party for self-defense, this judge decided to make this a political conversation, not necessarily just the judge, the a following attorney general at the time. You know, it was just a whole lot of moving things around. It just literally looked like a chessboard of creating madness, deliberate madness with intention to create a scenario that wasn't true, but it was quote unquote anti-establishment. They love to call people anti-establishment, you know, troublemakers and rabble rousers. So these young men are there to they're organizers of the time. They were organizers of the time. They brought in 15,000 individuals to come in to do this protest. The point of it was to protest the war. And they were very blatant about that because there was a lot of protests around this time. So during the process of this, this hearing was, you know, it's a lot to look at, but the biggest point where we push this whole narrative assessment is in the analysis of the time, the behavior of the people involved, the events that took place, and how they juxtaposition and how nothing really has changed in this country, period. There has been absolutely no changes in anything. So that's the purpose of making an assessment of this particular period piece. So I want to shout out our brother Eric. I hope he comes generally in. To give him some love, you know, because we, you know, we're very particular about what we take in terms of our consciousness, in terms of, you know, just the vibratory frequency period on certain things. So there's a lot of things that come past us. So when we take a decent recommendation for certain things from some people. So we looked at this Chicago 7. It was really interesting. It caused me to look more into the case and to find out a little bit more about the specific details. But, you know, they had Bobby Seale dragged up on charges up for shooting the cop. So, yeah, you know, they just, you know, he literally did a lot of things. There was a lot that had to do with this case in terms of the timeline, in terms of the way things were done to African people, particularly at this time. Like I said, there hasn't been much change with the way things have been done, how we've been treated, how we are continually treated in this country. And it was interesting to me to watch the unfolding of the show, of the movie, because I watched this judge. Now, there's a judge presiding this case named Julius Hoffman. He's over, and there happened to be a Hoffman in the defendant's box also. Right. So they went through this.
Abby Hoffman.
They went through this. It was
played by Sacha Baron Cohen, by the way. So
yeah, Sasha, you know.
You know, Borat. You know,
Borat.
And he also has his own separate form of social commentary that's, you know, actually quite poignant and really
oftentimes.
So check it out.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the top. Yeah, but you want to check him out too, because I mean, you know, but after you get past the slapstick comedy of Borat's comedy presentation,
this is actually a deep social analysis.
It's real intention around the way that he presents his comedy. I'm a fan. I used to be a stand-up comedian at one time, telling the story and the narrative of, you know, political, just like ironic, funny, but not really. But I gave that up for a different perspective in the way that I wanted to present my information and my messaging.
Right, exactly.
Because, you know, I get it. Some people can do it. I chose not to. So, but Borat, you definitely can check him out. But this movie is on Netflix, family. So you want to get into the depth of the analysis of this particular judge. This judge represents, if you could encapsulate the African American experience in this American system, you will see Bobby Seale as African people in America specifically. He represents all African people. You know how that goes, because inside of white center consciousness, when you won, you represent all African people. They clump everybody in there together 99.99% of the time. Even if they're not doing it on a conscious level, it's subconscious. Mm-hmm. But white people refuse to create any system of consciousness that allows them all to be clumped in as one unit of people. They've been very deliberate and intentional about ensuring that there is never a single narrative that lumps all people from Europe that arrive from the Caucasus Mountains as one group of people. Right? It almost wipes away the history of the Europeans coming from the Caucasus Mountains as an origin, period. It's almost like a vague fade away, like a puff of smoke. Even though that is historically correct, because of the way that they socially have presented their narrative, it almost is non-existent. It's almost like what we say about Egypt. People literally think that Egypt is another place. Egypt is a part of Africa. Egypt is North Africa, right? Egypt is not somewhere else. It is a part of Africa, but that's another conversation.
Right.
But I'm just saying that to say you want to get into Bobby Seale standing as the African for all African Americans. Julius Hoffman, the Honorable Judge Julius Hoffman, and spoke about himself, you will not disrespect this court. You will not raise your voice. You will not address this court. Like, he continued to have, he was the constant door that kept slamming in the faces of African people through this entire movie. Even things that were deliberately obnoxious and unseen.
Right.
Unseen. Totally out of context for someone who's on the bench, probably served for decades, who has decades worth of education, et cetera, is behaving in a manner to the point where it got so bad that the people, the prosecutor, I believe his name was Schultzman.
No, was it Ray Schultz? I think it's
Schultz
for sure.
Had to approach the bench to drag up the judge. Like, hold on, wait.
The hell are you doing?
I know we watched you carry on, and with all due respect to your court, we've watched you carry on and clown this entire hearing.
Right. You
got a man gagged and bound in a courtroom in the United States of America.
And think that that's okay.
Do you understand this? I moved. He made a move. He said, I moved to have his case dismissed and called a mistrial. Because this is like, at this point, see, and this is where I stand with African people, and I say that I'm not waiting to pull the heartstrings of people who are having a white cultural experience. I'm not waiting for that, because the man already had gone into the back room where Sandra Bland went into the back room. She didn't come back out. She didn't come back out. She went back there, and there was no one to stand in the balance and say, you know what, guys, I think this guy might be enough. So first he took a beating. Then he was bound and gagged and brought back into the courtroom. And what made him think that he could have him brought back into the courtroom with 60, 70, 100 witnesses to look at this man sitting here like this? Nobody else said anything. Everybody looked on in horror. Everybody was in shock, but nobody said a thing.
I think that's indicative of our experience now too, because we can sit here and look at what's happening to Black people front and center, to Black Americans taking place, even just this year alone. And yeah, you can go and protest in the streets and things like that, what have you. But by and large, like, what's really being put front and center, there should be an ultimate, like, supreme shift. It was taking place. What we actually have is, like, we're looking in shock and terror, but not much is moving the needle around the actual action. Because right now we got the taking place of this changing hands of presidential leadership, and already it almost feels like people are kind of going to sit back on the laurels, which is like the biggest fear, like, with this whole election and this whole contrast to what Trump has brought to American people for all these years. So it's indicative of a history of more of the same. Right. So how do we look at this aspect of history, look at this trial, and see that it's more or less reflected in today's times, and show that space? That's 50, 60 years of no change. Right. 50, 60 years of these horrors and these crimes against humanity being loopholed around law and justice by people that are made by people that don't care about actual justice for all people. How do we look at this? That what we deal with in the now of today is just as indicative and makes the end of the 60s just as fresh a memory as yesterday. And I think that's what was so frustrating to see and watch with this trial. I mean, this movie particularly, obviously, there's a trial. It exists. It's a real trial.
And then some of it is a little bit. It was based on a true story.
It's based on a true story.
It is a little bit embellished. It always
it's always going to be an embellishment. Yeah,
creative license in certain areas, but the gist was definitely present. Mm-hmm. The gist was present.
So please watch that.
But we want to talk about the symptoms. Mm-hmm. We want to unpack the symptoms of who Julius Hoffman, the Honorable Julius Hoffman, who was the judge on this bench, and who he represented as a icon, as a symbol, right, of the interactions that African people in America have with white-centered consciousness. Mm-hmm. When you want to say the dominant class, colonialism, capitalism, imperialism, when you want to say all of these isms, when you want to say all of these things, this man sat there in front of this courtroom, and at one point I had a flash while I watched a movie of him rolling up a newspaper and hitting his dog on the nose to have his dog sit down and stop barking. Mm. That's what I saw. Because the man was jumping up like, I gotta say something. I'm a grown man. You're gonna tell me to sit down and pop me like I'm two? I don't belong here. He tries to tell his story. He tries to respectfully request his counsel. He tries to respectfully request to make a motion. He tried to respectfully, initially, the defendant's attorney, because he had a separate attorney because he really shouldn't have been a part of that case. So his attorney was away in the hospital.
Yeah, he was injured, yeah.
And the group that actually was involved in the incident that was in question, and what was in question was whether there was a conspiracy to incite violence, whether there was a conspiracy to create an unsafe environment as a result of this protest. Because remember, at this time, along with the Black Panthers, the government itself being puppeteered by the capitalist backdrop, the Black Curtain, was pushing this war. So these gentlemen were saying, so you convicted us. We're going to now have this sentencing, and we're going to read all the names of the individuals who've been killed, the soldiers, the American soldiers who were drafted.
Almost 5,000 names.
Who were drafted, right? And then what he did with them, he said, well, which is what always happens in the Matrix. I'll bargain with you. I'll give you some leniency. I'll take kindly on you if you make your comment brief and favorable. So you're going to frame how I can dispute what you have to say. And then you're going to tell me that if I accept your carry stick, you may be lenient around my sentencing. What does that mean? Maybe, because you haven't demonstrated that there was a time when the defending attorney even wanted to have a geriatric doctor in the audience to look at this. Is he out of his mind? We need to know, does he have dementia?
Right.
Is he crazy? Because he seems these behaviors are out of control. So this judge throws up every time Bobby Seale stands up. And then, Bobby Seale, Fred Hampton is talking to him because he's sitting directly behind him. So during this trial, Fred Hampton also gets assassinated. And Bobby Seale gets the news while he's being detained because he doesn't get bail because he's in a trial for a case that's in Connecticut that ended up being, thrown out or what have you. But he was not able to leave the court while this trial was going on. It was 100 and something days, 150.
It was almost 160 days.
It was a lengthy.
It was unreal. It was a little bit more than half a year.
Maybe a little more. Just about more than 6 months. Yeah. This case went on for, and he had to sit in jail during this process. And his wife was telling him before he left not to go. And she was saying, no, I don't think you should go. I don't think you should go. This is just, And she said, wait a minute. This doesn't really look good. I don't really agree with this. So at the end of the day, there is some consciousness that we're not dealing with as a community of people, African. Okay. and we're not really talking about what happened. And the thing about it is we don't want to really discuss our interactions with the Matrix is because we have accepted subordinate posture. I shared something on Instagram, and it's actually a...
He's doing a conversation. If you watched the movie, please feel free to share your thoughts and comments as well along with this conversation. To look at the movie as a jumping off point for the bigger conversation of American conflict, especially with Black America. And share the video. Find value in the conversation. Share the video and let's join the conversation. Go ahead.
So I shared a clip on, and it's called The Bondage Break. I shared it on Keys to Soar on my Instagram. KEYS_SOAR_Nefear NEFEAR. And it's Bondage Breaker. To make it, you either sell dope or get to entertaining white folks. I've never seen it done any other way. And this is Dave Chappelle, his stand-up comedy. Dave Chappelle is a clown. But at the end of the day, there's a whole lot of truth. So this is the whole reason why I was doing comedy at one point, because there is so much truth. And you can't present so much context to these narratives, and you can be very crass and very blatant in the way you say them. Because in a respectable conversation, no one is going to tell you. What they tell you is, oh, go to school, get a good job, go to college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, do all these wonderful things, and this is going to happen for you. They don't tell you that once you get that education, you're going to have to tap dance. You're going to get that education. That's only 10% of your journey, especially as an African. You're going to have to cut off 2 or 3 limbs, maybe give a couple of pints of your blood in order to make it in this matrix. So in other words, that's what he's saying. You got to entertain these white folks, or you got to sell dope. So either way, you're betraying self and soul, or your community in order to come up in this community. This is what he's saying. And and subtly, not even subtly, but as a matter of factly, we have accepted that as a community of people. This judge was able to consistently attack this man, tell him he had to sit down, try to silence him, call him all kind of, passive aggressive, just mistreating this man. Mm-hmm. And everything that was done in this case to present truth, this judge stood in front of every possibility of presenting anything that was true. Mm-hmm. It was a chessboard that was like a crazy game that he was playing. And he was like, oh, so you guys are going to do that? No, you got to no. And in places where he was undermining the law. This man is due process. He has a right to represent himself if he chooses to. Right. And if he chooses to represent himself, which he attempted to invoke his own license, he asked, oh, who is that man behind you? Oh, that's Fred Hampton? Oh, okay. He's associated with the Black Panthers, guys. So he's giving you legal advice? Is he a lawyer? Like, why is that your business?
Right. Doesn't matter. Because
that's usually what people do. This is a narrative in the story. Now, this is the narrative inside of the movie. Because who can, unless he's giving you legal advice, how do you know these things? I read. I'm a lecturer. I'm an educator. Why wouldn't I know these things?
Right.
You the one who don't know nothing about me. I'm good. But I'm sure Fred Hampton was helping him. But regardless to the point, he has the right to due process. And the lawyer of the other defendants said to him, well, this man he's not a part of us. Bless the Sister Lotus. He has a right to due process, and he asked to represent himself. And when he represents himself, he can then cross-examine witnesses on his own behalf. Because he would have asked those witnesses, have you ever seen me? Do you know me? Was I there that day? Right. There was a cop who was on the stand. 2 or 3 cops, I believe. Yeah, have you seen me? Do you know me? Was I there that day? I mean, it was a sea of white faces. If I'm a Black man, 6 feet XYZ, you would have saw me. Did you see me? So he wouldn't allow him to get a word in edgewise to the point where he had the officers take him away and treat him like he's supposed to be treated.
Right, which is what he said.
Which was ironic to me. Treat him like he's supposed to be treated. How is he supposed to be treated? Well, apparently how he's supposed to be treated was getting beat down, buck breaking, just like they do horses, tied up and gagged to make him silent.
And here's the thing, like when he said treat him how he's supposed to treat your family, I was like, oh, I already know what this sounds like. And then you saw the first punch, I was like, this was not surprising whatsoever. It was frustrating, but it was not surprising. That it can be predicted now. Like what is the long arm of the law say? What does the justice system say for a Black man in America that actually that speaks against this system, speaks to what your system should be, right? In the face of the system. Oh, the system's going to put you in your place and remind you where you are, always, forever and always. So
Well, the system in and of itself, they're just placed there as a means of the deception. These laws and things like that, they actually really don't exist. They only get credence because we have a community have decided to agree to them.
Mm.
And the biggest arm inside of this is whiteness. Whiteness as a cultural experience subscribes to these things. The great majority of white people, even only to a slight degree, they still subscribe to them. Because in this system, people who are having a white cultural experience get privilege.
Right. The
privilege that they consistently deny having. And even if they even accept having it only at a slight degree, it's not even deep enough to understand how this man stood in front of a courtroom in front of 100+ people, reporters and otherwise, because the courtroom had reporters and people who were recording this on the front line in this courtroom to see how he mistreated this African man, and nobody said anything other than the other defendants who were themselves already in freaking trouble. They were advocating from across the room at the other table on his behalf on a regular basis through the whole trial.
Right. And they knew he wasn't there.
And they were getting contempt charges. That lawyer got what, 30 contempt charges?
He got about 20 something. Bobby Seale got about like 30 something.
Yeah.
Then I think Abby got like
this judge was just tossing out contempt of court.
But it was a bit admirable to see, because they were standing up, right? They were letting it. Hey, look, yo, you're actually really fucking ridiculous as a judge and as a system. So no, this is a joke. So we're gonna make jokes out of this thing.
Then they made a joke.
It's all good. We're gonna make jokes. Abby Hoffman made a joke about he was going hard because you can only get Sacha Baron Cohen to fulfill that particular type of role.
That's exactly what he played. He played a
perfect role for him. Making fun of the fact that him and the judge. Well, actually, the judge was the one that pointed out that they have the same last name.
Just to let you know,
let's be clear, we are of no relation. And whenever you mention Mr. Hoffman, know that you're not talking about it. That's how he sounds. Not talking about me, but you're talking about the defendant. Like, bruh, seriously? Like, you're the judge.
You think we could have gathered that? There will be context on the stenographer.
That's how obtuse he was. But what was great in that was that there was a strong representation of solidarity and actual allyship in that particular time frame, where it was different, where it was like, look, we're legit, like, we can't stand this establishment, and the way you're treating this black man is not right.
It's unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
And they used their ability and privilege.
Absolutely.
Because they were doing a whole lot of rant through the whole hearing, puffing and puffing and doing all kind of stuff, behavior, body language. And they never got it. Well,
they were wearing robes and wearing
they came in wearing
outfits.
robes. They came in wearing and you know what? They got contempt charges for that, but they didn't give a flying fig Newton because that's what they were there for. Like, this is ridiculous. They had men this was when they had the draft. The draft was going on.
Yeah, it was a draft.
And they were drafting people to send them to Vietnam to kill their Vietnamese brothers and sisters. For no reason.
Anybody know that
this was all corporate interests, and all wars are corporate interests.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Make you believe that these random people
they're telling you this is government.
Enemy.
This is not government. None of it is government. None of it is to protect your social liberties. These people are not over here trying to protect our liberties, offend us. These people are over where they are doing what they do. Oh, well, we got to put democracy all over the world. Why? Those people have their culture. They're free to do what they want to do.
I didn't ask you.
They're free to do what they want to do. And their people, they have a way of dealing with their situation. If America was the moral fabric, it would be great. But America is not the moral fabric. America is not the place and the institution that could create harmony and equity around the world. It just is not. It doesn't have the capacity. It can't even think into a place of what that would even look like. Because even itself looks like deception, manipulation. It's just a whole cluster muck of disillusioned foolishness. I just can't even. I'm just like trying to figure out what descriptors would really be sufficient, and they're just so many. It's just such a big mess. So, and that's only if you're looking at it with clear eyes. If you're not looking at it with clear eyes and you're enamored by this experience and you're still trapped in the shiny object syndrome, you got some growing to do. But this is, as I stated, the system doesn't work. It breaks down. America is not a morality. It doesn't keep up its treaties. It breaks its promises. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't have the backbone in order to be an entity that is of any high position on the world landscape. America is the kind of, if America was a person, it would need a mentor. America is like 6 years old, and it would need serious guidance and mentorship, because in this moment, it's not showing up as anything that can present. But what it did in order to do that is it bullied itself. It bullied us. It used its military. It used its weapons threats. That's all it did. And it used shiny object syndrome. It oppressed other countries to ensure that they looked to, and it branded itself as the shining star and the land of opportunity. And in order to galvanize support, it gives a slight bit of an opportunity to everyone but American Africans. Everyone but American Africans have access, and that is intentional. The reason for that is to create dissension so that there's constant division. Because these individuals are coming from little or nothing. So this looks like an opportunity to them. Doesn't look like they're going to mount up with African Americans who paved the way, who paid in blood into this soil, right? They're not going to mount up with them. They don't care nothing about that. That's not my business. That doesn't bother me. I don't have nothing to do with that. I came here for opportunity and I'm getting it, so I'm good. And that's how they're sitting with it. That's how they are sitting with it. And the Matrix ensures that when it does these killings and these lynchings, ironically, the majority of the time, it literally kills African Americans. There have been cases when there have been, Amadou Diallo, Abner Louima, I want to say Anthony Baez. Yes, there has been individuals other than African Americans killed in these incidents. There's been a couple of incidents, not as much. The window is not that wide because there's something distinct about African Americans that is noticeable and you can distinctly put your hand on it when you're talking about a police interaction with these individuals, and they choose who to mistreat this way because they know what the universal landscape consciousness is towards dealing with these individuals. You got some pictures of I want to see this Judge Julian Hoffman.
Give me a second.
I want to see this real Julian Hoffman. I want to see what this crazy judge looked like from the movie. Because this judge is a hot mess. So we're talking about the symptoms, African. We're talking about Judge Julius Hoffman as a quintessential, if you could encompass the experience that African people were having, this gentleman encompasses the Matrix and what white consciousness looks like as it impedes, of course, the greater landscape of African people. Not the few that seep through, the Oprahs, the Cosbys, and you see how they treated Cosby. Not the OJ. You see they did the OJ. Not the Michael Jackson and the Princes and the Whitney. You see they did the Whitney Houston. You see they did the Michael Jackson. You see they did the Prince. So just when they get tired of you, they just dispose of people's lives with no remorse. Maybe I said, it's a conspiracy theory. It's not, right? It's not. That is your cognitive dissonance. That is your willful ignorance. Because the actual writing is on the wall. The best place to hide something is in plain sight. And they literally do this right in your face so that you're simple enough to say it's a conspiracy theory. Now, when they say that the aliens built the pyramids, now that's a conspiracy theory.
Right.
Africans built the pyramids. The geniuses of the African consciousness built the pyramids. Africans were first smelting iron in Africa. Right here. You know how much? 10,000 degrees to heat. No machinery. Pure ingenuity, African brains and power. That's it. African people did that. So no, aliens did not come here to America, to the US, to the planet to build pyramids and lead crop circles. That's a conspiracy. That's some foolishness. But, you know, we like to believe in fairy tales out here in these streets, and we reject real truth and we reject knowledge, but we do like fairy tales.
And the challenge is he look like a fucking runt.
Look like this Hoffman. He's a hot mess.
He doesn't look anywhere near like the guy that they have.
Yes, he does.
They try to make him look imposing but he looks like 4 foot nothing, whatever, runt guy. But anyway, and what's crazy is that when we deal with like this looking at truth, and conspiracy theories and all that type of stuff, and like, you know, you say conspiracy theories was, you know, brought into play to counteract everything, to counteract, you know, like Black Panther Party, the COINTELPRO, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah,
all of the CIA is a way of subduing and quelling any interest in overturning what they're, you know, anything they're saying that's for the destruction of civil liberties and things of that nature.
Right.
To now we're in the point where so many of us now easily succumb to and easily help perpetuate lies just for the sake of notoriety, for the sake of views and sake of publicity. You know, we have, you know, by virtue of like printed news is actually becoming old news. It's almost like a trinket now, to where you have social media news and online news to where anyone can make a site now. And it's because of this instant nature of needing information, people are willing to make up things at the drop of a hat just to make sure that people still have their eyes on them.
Yeah.
Right. But the Denzel Washington said, it's like they're fighting to be the first rather than fighting to be the truth.
To tell the truth.
To tell the truth. You know, and this is what we have dealing with. So when you have that going through the landscape of who's saying things just to say things, you know, that becomes problematic. And then you can't really decipher through what's the actual truth and what's the reality. And then who gets lost in the fold? African people and people that are suffering from injustices and civil and violations to their civil liberties day in and day out. Because now you can't even filter through what was the actual proper case. How was this actually racism? Was this actually bigotry?
That's right.
Was this actually anything, or was it just happenstance of like, oh, you were just at the wrong place at the wrong time? And you know, and this is what compounds and makes the situation for the African harder in this U.S. landscape and faced with what is my human rights looks like, what does my civil liberties look like? I don't know anymore, because they're being compounded not only by the government but now by people on the ground, civilians that think they can have a voice in every single pocket of humanity, and realizing that a lot of those folks subscribe to that because it's good ratings, because people like to see train wrecks, because people like to see the destruction of fellow.
But that is also a cultivated consciousness. That consciousness, see, this is when you talk about nature versus nurture. African, I tell you, want to understand this concept, these experiences. You want to ensure that you have a broad land, several different types of information bases. And this is in behavioral psych, sociology. You know, you want to really get into this. You know, the concept of conditioning, mind conditioning, behavioral conditioning, Pavlov. The short story really quickly. So you have this dog, you have a bell, you have a light, and you have a bowl of food here. So I'm going to ring this bell. I'm going to turn this light on, ring this bell. I'm going to give this dog this food. This dog is going to salivate. I'm going to turn this light on, ring this bell. This dog is going to give this some food. This dog is going to salivate. I'm going to turn this light on, ring this bell. Give the dog some food. I'm going to turn the light on, ring the bell, give the dog some food. The dog salivates. Now I'm going to turn the light on, ring the bell, no food. The dog still salivates. I'm going to turn the light on, ring the bell, no food. The dog still salivates. I'm going to turn the light on, ring the bell. The dog still salivates, no food. So now what you've done is you've conditioned a behavior where there is a response to stimuli that's no longer there, but the response is consistently the same. This is called conditioning behavioral conditioning. And this is done to us as a community of people on a daily basis. And then it's also compounded by quite a few other things, like the group mentality. Everybody's got to be on par with, no one wants to be separate. Nobody has the courage to stand on their own. You know, everybody wants to be a part of the crowd. Everybody wants to be cool kids. And then, you know, you have all these other things like modeling behavioral theories. So now that everybody wants to be the cool kids, who are we going to tell you are the cool kids? Well, Jay-Z is a cool kid. You guys can follow Jay-Z. You guys can follow Kanye West. You guys can follow so-and-so and so. We have academics and scholarship in our community that has infused us with African-centered consciousness, who have the frequency and vibration of healing for our people. That matters. when you're taking in this information. But we've taken in so much information and we've taken in the frequency, and as African people, we're absorbing energy. We're empathic. Even for those of us who don't really realize that we are. We're receiving energy and it's not our own and it's foreign. And because you don't even know where you are in that matrix, you can't find your way out the labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they tell you in your face that everything is not political, everything is not racial, everything is not color. Who are telling you these things? Dysfunctional African people who are deaf, dumb, and blind, and people who are having a white-centered consciousness who they're not even equipped to have this conversation awake, period. They're nowhere near. I don't care how many alphabets follow their name. They are not consciously aware of an ability to have this conversation to the depth that an African can. So you are the authority in the room at all times, even with the ignorance that you do have.
Right.
You still know more than they do because it's happened to you and not them.
Right. But a lot of those that deal with that are trying to suppress those situations as if those are false narratives, and it's not. You can't suppress those situations because they're yours. They're yours for a reason. You don't want to own them, but you have to because that's the only way that you have make some sense of the direct and clear lines of the hatred and bigotry that takes place because of that. To ignore color is to eradicate the plight of the African American and the plight of people of color and varying people that deal with racism and injustice daily. You cannot ignore color, especially you as a person of color, as a black person.
How dare you?
How dare you ignore your color?
I don't want to be a color.
I don't want to be a color. You would no. That doesn't work. You don't get to opt out.
You don't get to opt out.
You don't get to opt out because at the end of the day, other people won't opt out of seeing you for who they think you are and judging you accordingly and providing whatever blockages and whatever obstructions to whatever you getting to your next goal, your next point because of that, not because of your talent, not because of your intellect, not because of anything that deals with skill or anything like that. No, you'll get blocked for that job or that opportunity because of your color. So you can go ahead and eradicate your color, ignore it all you want to.
Oh, it's
because the rest
casting.
of the system won't.
That's right.
And it'll be judged accordingly. And you want to constantly ignore it to the point where now you're just confused. Well, I don't know why I didn't get this job. You know why.
Because you're black.
Own it.
Or because you're black.
Be with it.
Or when there's so many.
Majority rules conversation is what people seem to reign supreme on. So let that be the case in the majority rules of the black community and the black experience in America. That is what it is because it has a basis.
I mean, we get to dig into this, family. I mean, at the end of the day, I have a personal issue with not being able to analyze this authentically.
Right.
If you do not, this is science. This is basic science. If you want to find a situation, you always look for patient X. Go to the root. Go to the beginning. And that's the scientific method. You do the science. You go back. You follow the breadcrumbs. You follow the origin. If you don't follow the origin, you don't arrive to solutions. Anything you come up with is going to be short-sighted and it's going to be a risk. And you haven't done a proper risk-benefit analysis to see, well, I'm in a space where I'm looking at the risk-benefit analysis. I'm looking at an authentic, full landscape of this conversation. And I have already made my personal recommendation based on the shoulders of the ancestors that I stand on and their research and their support that they've also given. And I've made my own recommendation, African. And if you don't get to the nuts and bolts of this thing, we need critical mass, point blank, period. If we're going to have any shifting, it's going to be critical mass. And you're going to need to buffer yourself from the madness of the matrix because it is going to attack your ability to wake up. Doesn't want you to wake up. Awakened Africans, this is why they didn't want African people to read. Because having intelligence allows you to make decisions. It allows you to make choices. And you once you're in the matrix, doesn't want you to have choices. But now you're able to educate yourself to the highest degree of education in this land, which is a PhD, postdoctoral studies, and whatever. You can get all kinds of accolade hung all over you. What do you think the depth of programming is now that you can educate yourself? Because in the African community, we have a whole lot of subject matter experts. But when it comes to making this full landscape assessment and looking at the impact that living inside of white society, I had a white woman say to me once, Black people can be successful in white society. First of all, no one agrees to white society, and I don't know who white folks, other than the fact that they had a big stick, said that they were in charge, because that's exactly how it happened. There was no voting. No one voted to say, hey, well, you know what? These guys are, they've earned the right. Or we support these guys because they're the best choice. No, they bullied and they ran through here with a big stick and said, this is my house, I'm taking this. And if you don't like it, you can get out. Lay down or get down. Get down or lay down or something other, right? So that doesn't make you in charge. That doesn't make you the best. That doesn't make you in charge. It just means you're a bully. And let me tell you.
Peace, Brother Joseph. Thank you for joining the conversation. Please remember to share the broadcast again during the conversation, and let us know your thoughts. We're talking about we based the conversation in our recent viewing of the Chicago 7. The trial of Chicago 7 is out now on Netflix, assessing the 1969 trial, I want to say, of the Chicago 7 that were protesting the war, the Vietnam War, and also the Democratic Convention that led to riots ensuing with the police and things of that nature. Very good film, and we encourage you to watch it and kind of break down and synthesize how it's a reflection of even the now in 2020, how relevant it actually is. I'm sorry, you can go.
No, so we're looking at a greater landscape. So this is why I have a huge issue with you not accepting without permission. Without permission, because there is a psychosis, which is that Stockholm syndrome, and that insatiable desire to be validated by whiteness, because we've already been behaviorally conditioned to see whiteness as right, without merit, just right, just in the front, just in authority, just creating order. We look to this space, and this is what we had been conditioned to believe is the place we should look for guidance. So you got to get outside of that.
Yeah.
So my real quick short story on that one was the moment that I broke free of this one, lean not to your own understanding, to talk to, to the blast, this whole concept of blasphemy, the Christian Bible theory, because that's one of the mechanisms that is used. So I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fail safes to ensure that all of these mice come to this spot right here.
Right.
So every time that mice goes down here, there's going to be a reroute that's going to bring that mouse right back here. Okay. This is where I want the mice. I want the mice in here. So there's 6 routes that's going out right here. 6 different possibilities. If you go this way, that mouse will go down there and come right back here. If he go that way, he's going to go up through there. He's going to come right back here. Suppose he go that way. I'm going to send him back that way. He's going to come right back here. And that is what consistently happens. This is behavioral conditioning. And I don't care how many, like I keep telling you, it's not about how many educational accolades you get in this matrix. None of those things work. All those things are just journeying to keep you coming right back here. It's just another journey. It's just another road that brings you back to here. I'm an educator. I am an advocate of education, but I am an advocate of Malcolm X's homemade education. Do not go to the university here underneath white-centered consciousness and the oppressive forces to have them fill you up. You go there to gain skills. You do not go there to be educated.
Exactly.
Do not go to no college and tell your children's children and your nieces and nephews, do not go to college to become educated. On top of that, you have educators in front of the room who themselves have inside of their minds the concept of white-centered consciousness, whether they are white or not. They are wearing white-centered consciousness. And we need to really come to the conclusion that white-centered consciousness is not a good thing. So even white people with white-centered consciousness need to do something about that. But that's their healing journey, and they got to work that out. Let them work it out. Mind your African business. Exactly. They will soon come to that conclusion on their own. That white-centered consciousness hasn't really been a benefit. And you know what? Greatest indicator of the future is the past. And as far as I'm looking at you running around the world over here with your big stick, and you wiping out whole entire civilizations, the white-centered consciousness is doing it. white-centered consciousness, Belgium, Leopold went over to the Congo and killed 50 million Congolese because they were in his way. That's it. Y'all gone, bye. They went to Tasmania and killed all the Tasmanians. Brought Otabanka from there, put him in the Bronx Zoo. Killed his whole family and put him in the Bronx Zoo. See, white folks did that because the Tasmanians were just in their way. Right? Came here to this land of the indigenous. And you got to be careful because your eyes are going to be playing tricks on you. See, this is what white-centered consciousness created. You know them by their fruit. Okay, so this is not about hatred towards anyone. This is not about a fight with anyone. This is about you educating your African consciousness and taking back and reanimating your mind. That's what this is really about.
Right.
If you're scared, if there's a boogeyman in your closet behind you having this authentic conversation about your current experience, you're not going to be able to fortify your next generations if you're not having a truthful conversation about your current situation.
Right. You got to step into some courage around your conversation.
You might want to work out that boogeyman though.
Yeah.
Because that's the piece that holds us on. And then they mangle this consciousness with your ability to support yourself in the matrix. That's another reason why they galvanize and they beat down the African soul where they betrayed their own self and soul. Because how are you going to build up self-awareness, self-assertion, self-confidence, self-efficacy if every time you turn around, you got Judge Hoffman at the bench telling you to sit down and be quiet? Sit down and be quiet. Sit down and be quiet.
Follow what I say.
And you can't even do what you need to do for your own self, for your own self-preservation. Your own self-preservation is now being challenged.
Exactly.
Where you going to build it up at? And in order for you to eat or maintain or participate, because we also agree, because remember, the divine African already gave you everything you needed for your living experience. You didn't need anything else. So all of these things, when they say all these conveniences, I promise you they could have been created without the loss. Because African people and their civilizations were doing it for hundreds of years, thousands of years before Europeans.
Right.
They were agriculture, they were mining, they were smelting iron, they weren't creating ozone problems. They weren't creating global warming.
No, a lot of
they weren't killing the fish in the ocean.
It was working in tandem with the earth, not against it.
That's right. These things were already happening. So I want you to believe. I know European and white-centered conscious wants you to believe that a lot of this stuff just showed up, but there's nothing new under the sun.
That's why you have the ingenuity of those that were enslaved to create all the things that they did, despite the enslavers using it as an opportunity of them not knowing the land that they're in, and the laws that are available or not available to them for them to access to do patents on their experiment and on their inventions, right? Because that brilliance already existed. It existed in another land where all of that actually made sense, and the language was something that was well spoken between the people. Versus now you've now taken someone out of their element, place them in a new element, and expect them to thrive accordingly. But in which case we do, right? We've had to thrive. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot in the ways of psychological attachment to the spaces that we're in. So and how we deal with our identification in those spaces. So that was the huge major loss in that. But by virtue of who we are, instinctively we thrive wherever we go. But we it's through that we did suffer a big loss in identity and psychological attachment to who we are as a people. But we get to look at these examples. We get to, like I said, be courageous and step into these conversations.
We have to
step into these realities so we can get back to that, get to that Sankofa of who we are. Break that down.
Go back and get it and bring it forward.
Go back and get it and bring it forward. Absolutely.
Your thing. We get to look at our journey. We get to look at our people as a creation of what we have created. And then we need to tell it to our children. Yeah. So we break in free of those things. So, you have this concept of this, Julius Hoffman being this individual who, whether it's the law or not, he's just going to do what he want to do because he's a white man and he can just do that. And he has a whole bunch of people who I'm sure somebody's going to back him up because that behavior he has didn't happen yesterday. These things are not overnight occurrences. They are gradual and they are nurtured. People are not born racist. They become racist. You don't come into the world hating black people. You don't come into the world, bigoted. Those things are nurtured.
They're cultivated and nurtured.
It's cultivated, it's nurtured, and let me tell you, while you're afraid to have your family and your children on high alert out here in this world, these folks raise their 5-year-olds to hate, calling black folks the N-word, point blank from the door. They're around the dining room table talking about these crazy Negroes that's on the news, because this is Pavlov behavioral conditioning. We're going to underlay this conversation of African lives don't matter. So we're gonna compound it by giving these flooded TV narratives, because now that network TV is not really a thing anymore, right? They're having to figure out other ways to bring it out. So this is why we have such a huge, belligerent and ignorant type of music that we have now in feeding our children. It's just a complete asinine, mindless, ignorant type of vibration that's in our space for the past 10 years for our youth. This is why. Because network TV isn't really a thing now. They're all over YouTube. They're all over, Netflix. They're in these different avenues and places for their media, where they're taking in their media now. See, there was a time when network TV, that's the only place for you to get your media.
Right.
So the 6 o'clock news, 11 o'clock news, 5 a.m. to, what was it, 6 to Good Morning America, 8 a.m. to 10.
10, yeah.
And then you got the 11 a.m. news, and then you got the 5 or 6 o'clock news. You got another show coming on the Nightline. So you have all these different, and you got CNN running all day, every day, and all these different things are popping up, late breaking news and cutting across your soap operas and all these things when there's things happening in the world. And you know what it is? Black man laid there in the street, black man in handcuffs, a whole bunch of black mug shots running across the screen. So they did that in the 80s. In the war against drugs, they created an entire multi-layered narrative of demonizing African people. It started from the 60s. When you saw black men, beautiful, powerful African, upright African men asserting their own free agency and exercising the rules you said was a part of the rules, which is Second Amendment, the right to carry arms, right, and protect themselves. Black Panthers were not out here creating violence, but they are entitled, according to the Constitution, if the Constitution actually covered African people, which it doesn't. But if it did, it's a nice idea. If it did, they got access to the Second Amendment. We could play it. I'll play. That's what they said. We'll play along. We'll play along. So African people are still 3/5 man on the Constitution. And still not one of y'all is still not human. It takes 1, 2, 3 people to be a whole person according to the Constitution. To be whole, to be one. And this was done in order to give leverage to these counties, Congress, and legal power in terms of their, taking access to the numbers of slaves that lived in these counties. Again, using us as usual. So African, you better figure out how to get this message to your children so you can begin to nurture fortification and awareness and protection in your children. It's not okay for you as a parent to put your children in a situation where they are not okay. It's not all right. Talking about babysitting their ignorance, their innocence. It's no time for that. It's no time for it. You got to protect your children. They need to know the truth, because that is going to protect them. It's not time for innocence right now. Not time for that. There's a time for all things. And right now, the time is to fortify.
Exactly.
Fortify your mind, body, and spirit. Fortify the future generations, period. Done, and done. There's no more time for it.
Absolutely.
So, don't rock yourself to sleep. Don't be complicit in your own depression, oppression.
Exactly.
Family, because all of that's what it equates to. It equates to the fact that you just compliant, that y'all some happy slaves out here. Because that's what they have that in some textbooks, that the slaves were happy. Y'all some singing happy, Chucky along. Migrant workers, and you guys are, putting applications out here, some labor force, migration, So you want to get that narrative together. Absolutely. And I'm telling you, watch that Chicago 7 and watch that judge.
Absolutely. Watch
that judge. You want to do this? Here's the door slamming. You want to do this? Here's the door slamming. You want to do this? Oh, no, we're not going to do that. Oh, this man, the judge, the lawyer, the white guy, right? The white guy says, this man has the right to counsel. You violating his due process. He's saying this to the judge. The judge, you don't get to be a judge. Oh gosh, we was working on a campaign for municipal court judge. she could not be a municipal court judge without 10 years of legal experience.
Exactly.
So she already had 10 years of legal experience before she could even apply to be on the municipal bench.
Exactly.
So how do you get to be on a bench and you don't know that you are in violation of this man's legal right to due process?
Unless you do know.
Unless you do know and you choose that, well, because I'm a white guy, I'm the judge, I can do this and I can say what I want to say, and I can.
And you know, it's like lawyer, what have you, and like I've grown to understand how I can use my tongue and kind of do, you know, shift the narrative a little bit in the favor always. So I'm going to always favor the court, and fuck that black guy, fuck these kids that want to defy what we're doing here. You know, they're the casualties of this. Hey, white kid, we were trying to protect you, but you want to be, you know, whatever. Yeah. So you're gonna have to be casualties of this system to show that it's fair and just in our eyes, right? So that's the thing we deal with in those cases.
And what happened? Abby ended up committing suicide.
Abby ended up committing suicide. He wrote a book. A lot of them got on. Rennie Davis is still alive. It seems like he might be the only one left that's still alive of the Chicago 7. Rennie Davis. Who was running in tandem with Tom Hayden, who actually Tom Hayden became he became a politician over time.
Yeah, but they did actually. The judge actually said to him, because he's also the one,
which was interesting enough.
Yeah, during this case, that you know he has a possible bright future and blah blah blah
in this system, you know, in for this country, for this culture, whatever. And sure enough, he ended up becoming a politician over time.
Because he also said during the movie that anyone who knows, in order for you to get wins, you got to get the politics. In order to get it was a line that he said.
Essentially, it's like in short, he was like, you know, it's basically get inside in order to make the change. You gotta.
That's what he believed. Yeah. But that's also another hole for you to fall in.
Right.
Here you go, going that way. Come right back here.
And what was indicative of that as well was in the point where when they saw Bobby Seale bound and gagged, you know, Rennie Davis made a written note to the rest of the defendants, like to not stand. You know, you stand at the end of the court adjourned. Everyone stands, all rise, and make a decision to not stand as their protest within the courtroom.
That's right. They still protested.
And Tom was he was the only of the defendants to stand up when he said all rise, which was awkward,
wishful thinking.
And you know, in his ways of trying to defend in the public landscape, because that became news. It was a reflex, in being subscribing to the justice system, patriotic,
as it really is, not that as it's being portrayed, but as because that's what he also said that you know the legal system and the way that it's written. You know, one of those things I've also said in my past as well, like the work works when you work the work. Like the work could work if it was actually applied justly. Could.
Yeah, it could.
I can't say for the full commitment that it does, simply because this land was stolen. So if you want to make right, if you want to make amends, and that's the whole concept of healing, you got to make amends. You have to go back across that space and make retribution for your own offenses. You know, that's even in the 12-step program. You know, we've done some developmental work as well. When you made offenses to people, you get to go back and make and acknowledge your breakdown in that conversation so that you can create a new outcome for the moving forward. There is power in it. But white-centered consciousness is terrified of that. So that's their healing to do. As we keep saying, African, mind your African business. But you need to know the fine lines here. Okay? There is a conversation of the 12-step, and one of those steps being going back across your landscape of people you have offended and making amends. See, but you have white-centered consciousness and many different sets of whiteness under their sub who believe they have nothing to do with any of this. They don't believe that they have anything to do with oppressing African people. They like, you know, we came here, we got our visa, our green card, whatever the case may be, and we became so and so and so and so. My father came here with $20 in his pocket, blah, 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 da, da, da. And they want to they want to compare themselves to African people situationally. not understand that there's a broader landscape, even deeper than just basic opportunity, right? Because African people don't need nobody to give them no opportunity. Leave them alone. They'll create their own opportunity, right. i.e. Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the cities all across America of African people, self-sufficient, self-reliant, left alone, dealing with themselves, taking care of themselves, they're medicating themselves, training and educating themselves, bus systems, postal office, hospitals. They have their fully functional society, separate and apart and supportive. It wasn't garbage, right? It wasn't trash. It wasn't like, you know, you're going to go to the Ritz-Carlton. But no, now African people, because of our Stockholm syndrome, we got shiny object syndrome. So when they erect a Ritz-Carlton, you want to run over there and take your coin instead of coming over here to Mama Mabel's small bed and breakfast, because you want to go stand in front of the big fountain, right? See, this is what we do. And then Mama Mabel's business goes into the garbage, goes to trash because she cannot sustain it. But Ritz-Carlton get all your coin and disrespecting you. I mean, this is a theory. I'm not saying that Ritz-Carlton, this is the first thing that came to mind. I'm just saying, right? Any brand from anyone that is not in support of African-centered consciousness. And the great majority of the society that we live in, the businesses and the corporations that are within this society, are branched off from 1801, 1820, so-and-so, right? Parent company, go back to the breadcrumbs, find the parent companies, because every so often they change. Every so often they change the names of these companies so that they can start to, you know, change the narrative, rebrand.
Right.
So African, you figure your African life out, okay? Let's get it together. Let's fortify.
Absolutely.
Get in touch with it. And I want you to really, peace and blessings, Sister Michelle. I see you out there. Peace, power.
Yes, thank you.
And blessings. Thank you for joining us. Listen, we're running through. Listen, catch the replay. We had some good content today. You know, we get some more folks in here, drop some comments, and chime in on the perspective of the African. This Judge Julius Hoffman representing white-centered consciousness, the system of whiteness, and the way that it behaves so neurotically, and just sporadic, these obnoxious behaviors, just arbitrary actions, etc., to the point where you almost believe that this thing must need a doctor, because it cannot be functional. This is not functional. So check in with this as a narrative that is representative and indicative to the African's experience with white-centered consciousness, which is this matrix, this living experience. Check out Bobby Seale in this movie as being the quintessential he represents all African people in America. Okay, so I really want you all to check out that Chicago 7. We want to give a shout out to our brother Arik for giving us that recommendation. It was a very good recommendation. And we do look at these contexts and we do analysis on these movies because we really want to see what the messaging is that's around it.
Absolutely. There's a poster right there.
There's a poster on Netflix.
So yeah, it's available now on Netflix to stream. Very important trial in that time. Unfortunately, never really heard much about it. Mm-hmm. But hearing it now. And, it actually was called at one point the Chicago 8 because of Bobby's involvement, but clearly he was not involved. Right. So, it's holding true to the story of the 7 men that were involved in this particular trial. Mm-hmm. Please check it out. These are the original Chicago 7 here that were represented in the movie. And there's Bobby Seale right there. Let me get the thing from screen on there. So you see Bobby Seale involved in it in the trial, but not involved in the issue.
They only brought Bobby Seale's conversation to it because with Bobby Seale came the Black Panthers.
Exactly.
And they were trying to demonize those men for setting up that protest. So they were trying to generate a narrative and to also scare white-centered consciousness. White folks, they just get their vacuums. Mm-hmm. White women get their little women's lib things going on. And it's very easy to scare them. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to mend that whole big angry black man conversation of black men in black wear guns. They wanted to, put those two conversations together to create a bigger story than was. And that's how they did that.
And it was fortunate because it became antics in the courtroom that didn't need to be had. That added to a trial that went longer than it probably should have just because of that. Check out the trial. We meet up, want to learn more about it as well. And is how it impacts, American history, and looking at the American justice system or American injustice system, as we see it. So definitely, family.
Look into that.
So we appreciate y'all joining in tonight. Once again, make sure y'all do follow us. Available on Facebook at Soundbytes INTL Radio. Follow us and like us on Facebook, where we share lots of our content here. Of course, the broadcasts are live here each week on Monday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as our African in Business series, which airs on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we analyze a particular African in business or Africans in business to share their thoughts and processes and their products and their expertise and experience in being in business to help fortify the landscape of economics for the African community. So be sure to follow, and that's specifically on our Facebook page on Wednesdays. So also remember to follow us on Instagram, Soundbytes International Radio. Follow us on Twitter at Soundbytes INTL. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Soundbytes International Radio. Let's subscribe, and sub to Soundbytes International Radio on YouTube. And of course, remember to follow our podcast, the podcast version, the audio version of these broadcasts, available on Soundbytes International Radio on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can go directly there, or you can go to our website, scrolling at the bottom. This is soundbytes.com, where you can click that stream, and click those apps, and then follow us there. Please give the 5-star rating, and also provide some written feedback. We always appreciate feedback. It helps us support. Please give your reviews as well. So you have something you want to say?
Well, yeah, I'm going to always bring up this book so you guys can start to do that knowledge. Do that knowledge. You want to know about
Baba Mwalimu Baruti.
Give thanks.
Absolutely.
Get that Menticide, family. Get the Menticide. Get the book that's going to help you defragment and break the bonds of fear and get rid of that boogeyman in your closet so that you can stand up right, powerful African.
Absolutely.
Stay fortified, family.
Absolutely. So on Soundbytes International Radio, Black Conscious Acclaim, world is the aim. You know how we do. On a Monday night, we're gonna go out with the energy high. Shouts out to brother, real Naeem Bricks, coming with the I am, the power I am. Let's stay fortified, family. Let's stay empowered. Let's stay encouraged. Let's stay with courage, and let's be emboldened to push forth into a new era of African power and love and strength within our community, family. And self-efficacy. The nation over, the world over, and connect with our people again. All right, so sit tight with us. Let's jam out a little bit. And
let's jam out, jam session, guys.
Absolutely. Get in the vibes, all right? So, Soundbytes International, y'all. One love, stick with us.
I walk the face of the earth with a boldness which makes people ask who sent you. I tell them I am. They tell me that's a cute affirmation, but it's not an answer. I reply, listen again. My affirmation is your answer. It's the power of I am. This is the greatness of I am. Look at the strength that I have. None of the truth can deny that. Hear the proof in the I have. Here turn the reflection, I digress. I love me more, never loveless. I love me more, never loveless. Turn $1 million dreams, yeah, I manifest it. Look deep inside, yeah, you be the blessing. $1 million dreams, yeah, I manifest it. Everything I want, yeah, turn. This is the power of I am. This is the greatness of I am. Look at the strength that I have. None of the truth can deny the power of I am. Hands on chocolate more flow. Anytime I'm on flow. Lyrical hot home, bro. Bring the spot where I'm cold so low. This is what I'm around so low. So I pitched it fast, pitch it slow. To the cows call home, bro. It didn't make sense. I was told as a child I wouldn't be shit. Revenge on my mind, started flipping the script. They fed me lies, started picking that shit. They treated me different, I embraced that shit. You know the ones that be closest to you to be the family ties. Say goodbye, saying plenty murder, dirty service through the cuz. Stuck with a dirty burn up. Better I see what I was saying again. I couldn't resist. Show these niggas with their toxicness without a pocket pistol, monotonous. Told myself I couldn't rock with this. Hanging with goofies couldn't get rich. True blood suckers couldn't see bliss, couldn't see shit.
Gold face, nigga. They're wrong.
I ain't regurgitating percolating,
singing the same song. I'm blessed all day long.
Dream all day long. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Nigga, I am.
Some people might say I'm wise.
Well,
go ahead, Sister Malike. I must turn to purify the nonsense they tried to attest to my context.
I am resilient.
I am
more than a survivor.
I am a thriver.
This is the power of I am. This is the greatness of I am. Look at the strength that I have. None of the truth can deny that. Yeah, the proof in the hi-hat. Internal reflection, I digress. I love me more, never love less. I love me more, never love less. $1 million dreams, yeah, I manifest it. Look deep inside, yeah, you be the blessing. $1 million dreams, yeah, I manifest it. Anything I want, yeah, turn up. This is the power of I am. This is the greatness of I am. Yes, look at the strength that I have. None of the truth can deny the power of I am. I'm totally surprised that I
Happy.
take setbacks and learn to setbacks that those I gave jetpacks and no planes on fly. Now I'm in no place of wasting my time. Focus my goals to shift paradigm. I get up and go to keep my hopes on time. So I'm on the road with a goal that's refined. Yeah, body with a mean vision. Perspective from every day, go through a clean prison. Doesn't matter if I didn't inject the color of clay. When I lost my mother, found peace aside my queen, and I laid it on my brother's yeah. Bars was shaping up the grand scheme. I done wrestled to the mat on my damn demons. In a matter of time, became a champion. Come on, everyday march and do the damn thing. So I aim to pack out of the arena, inspire the future leaders with every line of the levers of God and unbelievers. Do what they can conceive us, know what we do and leave us. Brick, they never see us. I'm feeling good, motherfucker. What they say, I'm doing what they never would. Get a grasp on your life, yeah. Payment exactly the true price of. Go to your joint, playing nice, yeah. Now I recognize who the nice is. From the north to the southeast, kicking others every lane, share about seats. I'm aligned with it, man. You cannot be everything I want, get time. Man, I ain't talking in terms about which I want to or even I will anymore. Only things I proclaim, I do, I have, and I am. I do as my ancestors instruct. I have all I need to affect change, and I am a living magnification of God. This is the power of I am. This is the greatness of I am. Look at the strength that I have. None of the truth can deny that. Yeah, the proof in the hi-hat. Internal reflection, I digress. I love me more, never love less. I love me more, never love less. Turn up. $1 million dreams, yeah, how I manifest it. Look deep inside, yeah, you be the blessing. $1 million dreams, yeah, how I manifest it. Anything I want, yeah, turn up. This is the power of I am. This is the greatness of I am. Yes, look at the strength that I have. None of the truth can deny the power of I am.
Not a power, I am, family. Remember, Soundbytes National Radio. Keep your power on. Keep the I am on. One love. Join us next week. You know, if you're with family, what have you, this weekend, you know, this week,
be safe,
and be with your family. Be safe. Be tight knit, family. All right. We stand with our indigenous people, right? You know, you also stand with family. So you really choose, but be mindful of what's going on this week.
Thanks
right? So,
gathering, not
gathering.
Thanksgiving. We're thankful for gathering.
Absolutely. So
thanks gathering. Happy
one love, family.
From our family to your family.
One love. Soundbytes National Radio, y'all. Peace.
Keep it tight.